Welcome back, HiveMind. This is Shalzar with HiveMind Gaming, coming at you with another Raid Shadow Legends video. We took a break over the holidays, and now we're back to do a account takeover for my mate, EZERIATH. So, basically what we're taking a look at, he was doing a 4-key nightmare, and he wanted me to take a look at his account and see what I could do for him. So over the holidays, he pulled a Warcaster and a Tower, and so I told him I would jump on and see what I could do for an Unkillable comp for him. So the first thing I did is I went over to DEADWOOD.com, which I'll have the link in the description. And what I did is I went to the Unkillable comps here, and I started looking through the Unkillable comps. So I knew that there was a Warcaster Tower comp. I mean, it's a little lower, but I come to this and I was like, well, he's got a Skullcrusher, and it's the slow Crusher Tower comp, meaning that the speeds are going to be slower. And the fact that he's about a mid-tier game account, that means he's going to have the gear that could probably run a slow comp. So, and the fact that it can be done on Ultra Nightmare and Nightmare is also a bonus. So this is the comp that I actually chose to do. So when you're looking at these comps, or you come to this calculator or the speed tunes, it will actually tell you exactly what speeds you need everyone at. And it shows everything here too. So it says right here that you need a Doom Priest or Alternate Cleanser. I'm not sure that you actually need that, and I'll get more into that when we get to it. I did use Doom Priest because he has Doom Priest, and then of course also this right here. I don't have a debuff blocker or anything like that. You don't need that as well. We'll get into that more when we get into the champs that we chose to run this comp. So, but these are the speeds that you will need. So just keep in mind that if you want to stop this and write that down. But let's get into the actual champs that we are using for this composition. All right, so the first thing and the most important one is Tower. Now, Tower, where he is important for this composition, is his A3. Now, when it comes to books, you have to have this booked out. So if you can get the books, if you can get books to drop in just his A3, then you're golden. If you want him to do just extra damage when he's doing other stuff, then you can put books in other places. So when I was booking him out, I actually got the books to drop. By the time I got the books to drop in his A3, I had actually spent 6 books on him. So if EZERIATH actually wants to do a little more damage, he can always throw a couple more books in here to optimize his A1 damage. For his Masteries, this is what we did for his Masteries. Now, for this composition, he can actually, instead of putting this here, probably should have put it here in Heart of Glory, because he's only going to take damage only one time at any point in this fight. And so he really doesn't need that, because he's going to be at full health through the majority of the fight. All right, everything else is just standard clan boss rotation for the offense tree. All right, so for his stats, we've got him at 56k health. The attack is at 1.5, which his A1 is based off of attack, so that could be used, or that could be a little bit higher. His defense is not that great, but he's not going to be taking damage but one time. So his defense isn't that important for this build. His speed has to be 248. His crit rate we've got at 98. His crit damage is at 119. And we don't want accuracy on him at all. He doesn't need it. And then his resistance is at 121. So his gear is not even fully leveled, so he'll be able to pump out a little more damage once once we get his gear set up more. So there's a little room for improvement as well with the gear. Then we've got our second most important champ in this lineup is going to be Skullcrusher. And the reason why Skullcrusher is the most important champ, because he's going to be our stun boy. So basically we want him to have the lowest health in the composition. His health is going to be 31,000. With his attack we don't care about because it's irrelevant. His attack is based on defense, which is at 3k. His speed has to be at 172. His crit range is at 99. His crit damage is 161. And we do not want any accuracy on him at all either, because we don't want him landing his debuff at all. Alright, so again, his gear is not fully maxed out. This is another place where we can maximize more damage. His masteries are fairly similar to the towers. He will be fighting at 50% lower hit points, so he will benefit from Grim Resolve, so we're good there. What makes Skullcrusher important for this comp is his A2, which is Stonewall. It places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns, and then also places a counterattack buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. But here's the important part. It also places an Unkillable buff on this champion for 1 turn. So what we're going to do, and you also need a book to fall in this. So if you can get 1 book to fall here, then you're golden. You don't need books anywhere else, which is his A1. So if you want to maximize his damage, you can put more books there. But his passive is where he shines, because his passive decreases the duration of all debuffs on this champion for 1 turn at the start of each turn. So the important part is the stun that the clan boss throws on him is only a 1-turn stun. So at the beginning of his turn, he shrugs it off and he gets a turn like normal. So you don't need a cleanse for the stun. You just don't, because he's going to shrug it off anyway. Now, the important part is the unkillables for 1 turn. So we want to set him up to run at the speed to where right before the clan boss throws out his stun, he's going to throw out this ability so that he's unkillable for every stun. And then Roshcard, the tower, is going to throw out his damage, his block damage buff for the other 2 attacks that the clan boss does. So that way everybody's protected for the clan boss attacks, the AoE attacks, and then he's the only one protected for the stun. So that means we've got to make sure his hit points are exactly where they need to be, which is the lowest in the composition, which currently right now he is at 31k. So we've got to make sure everyone else is higher than him so that he's the one that takes the stun. Now, with that being said, there is a rumor. I've never experienced it, but there's a rumor that once he's at 1 hit point, he will not be targeted with the clan boss's stun. So if that happens, there are a couple of things you can do to make sure that he's never at 1 hit point. One, you can put him in a set of immortal gear. That way at the beginning of his turn, he heals himself by a small amount, which means that by the time the clan boss takes his attack, he won't be at 1 health. Another thing you can do is you can come into Masteries and you can take Life Drinker, which every time he attacks, he's going to do 5% heal of all damage he inflicts. So that will heal him. Another thing you can do is add a healer. So that's why Doom Priest is in this composition. I mentioned earlier that it's not necessary that you have Doom Priest, but that's why she's in this composition. So one thing we could do to maximize damage in this comp is by switching out masteries or gear on Skullcrusher to give him a little bit of that heal, and then changing out Doom Priest for another DPS. So just make sure that when you switch someone out, any other 3 champions after Skullcrusher and Tower can be any other champions other than a champion that has some kind of turn meter manipulation. Because if you have turn meter manipulation on any other champion, they're gonna run out of the Tower's unkillable or unblockable block damage buff. So you definitely want to make sure that it's like someone like Rodus or something like that. You don't want them to run out of that buff. So you can't use any champs like that. All right, so let's get into Doom Priest. So Doom Priest doesn't even have all of her masteries, but we were going the same way. Again, made the mistake of putting Grim Resolve, and then everything else is pretty much the same. She does not need accuracy as well. And then, so we've got her, again, her gear's not even maxed out. Again, we can optimize her damage output, but she really doesn't put out a lot of damage, but she does need crit rate for her A1 to work. Her A1 just gives slaps an increased crit rate, which most of these guys are already at 100% crit rate, but a lot of them are just like 1 or 2 points off. So putting that increased crit rate will definitely put them over the mark. Her A2 is going to help with your damage output, which is going to throw down an increased attack for all of your champs. And then this is where she really shines in most places. It's really not going to make a big difference here, but this is her pride and joy, I guess. She's got she at the beginning of each of her turns, she heals all allies by 7.5% of their HP and removes 1 random debuff from them at the start of this champion's turn. So, I mean, she will cleanse off the poisons, but the poisons really aren't going to do anything. So they'll damage the champs on the turn that Skullcrusher takes his stun, but I don't think it's going to damage them enough to make it bad for them for the rest of the game. So I don't think they're going to ever take enough damage from poisons to kill them, I guess is the best way to put it. So, but she will be there to help cleanse those poisons so they won't have to deal with that. And she'll also be the one to bring Skullcrusher off of his 1 hit point, so he won't not be targeted by the clan boss. So she's at 51k health. Her attack is at 2.1k, 1.9 defense. Her speed has to be at 186. Her crit rate, the highest I got it was 79% with 110 crit damage, and she doesn't need accuracy. All right, so next in our composition, we're going to look at Ratatouille here, Fane, and for her masteries, we went the same route, and we were smart enough to get Heart of Glory this time, and then we came down here and took Lore of Steel. So remember, when you're doing an unkillable team, that you avoid any abilities that have turn meter manipulation, like these, and down here, any of the cycles, just stay away from those because they all have turn meter manipulation. So you want to avoid them and go around them. All right, and then for her skills, what makes her great is both her A2 and A3. Her A3 is gives us a 60% decreased defense and a weaken, and her A3 gives poisons and decreased attack, which decreased attack doesn't help us really in an unkillable comp, but still great abilities. Now, you don't necessarily need her booked out, but to optimize damage, you want her booked out. So she is an attack-based champion, so she's going to pump out a little bit of damage. And by a little bit, I mean she could pump out some pretty good damage. So we do got her completely booked out and set up. All right, her stats are 41k HP, 3k attack, 1.5 defense. Now her base defense is really low. This is why she is great in an unkillable comp, because her basic defense is so low that it's going to be hard to keep her alive. Her speed, you want it to be at 178, with her crit damage, our crit rate as close to 100 as you can get it. Hers is at 98 with 120 crit damage, and her accuracy is at 220. All right, and then the last person in this comp is Frozen Banshee. So Frozen Banshee, for her masteries, we have the typical trope for clan boss, and pretty much the same as Ratatouille when it comes to her support and offense tree. She only uses her A1 and A3. She never uses her A2 in clan boss on auto. So her A3, which you definitely want booked out, is the poison sensitivity, and then her A1 throws out the poisons. So her stats, we've got her at almost 40k health, 2k attack, 2k defense. Her speed needs to be at 177. We got her at 106 crit rate with 114 crit damage with 236 accuracy. So again, he's got good gear. I mean, he's got good enough gear to get this comp working. Optimizing the gear is where this comp is going to really shine. So now, one thing that you have to worry about when you're putting this comp together, one, the most important is your stun boy has to have the lowest hit points on the team, which we've got. Next, there is going to be a round that your guys are going to take damage. Good part is he's going to have his ally protection up. Bad part is he's not going to have his unkillable up. So he's going to take damage at least once during the combat. So one thing you have to actually pay attention to is the fact that if you have multiple champs of the same affinity, when you're on an affinity boss, that's going to kill Skullcrusher. It's just going to crush him. See what I did there? Anyway, so what you're going to want to make sure to do is that you have at least no more than 2 of any one affinity on your team. So that's why we went with Ratatouille instead of Tyrell, but you can also go with someone like Stagnite, something like that for your defense down. So currently we're going to have 2 force affinities, 2 magic affinities, and 1 spirit affinity. So that way, because when you're on a affinity based clan boss, then he's going to do extra damage to that affinity. So if you had someone like Tyrell on the team, which gave you 3, or Dracomorph for that matter, so that gives you 3 magic affinity champs, then at that point if you go up against a Force Affinity clan boss, he's going to crit all three of those guys at the same time and just wipe Skullcrusher off the map. So by taking Ratatouille, that stops that from happening. Well, it slows that down from happening. It can always still happen. So I went ahead and set this up. Now, before you actually run it, what you're going to want to do is go back over to the DEADWOOD JEDI website, and you're going to go to the clan boss calculator right here. And you're going to input all your information. Now, if you've never input information in the calculator before and don't know how to use it, then definitely go to DEADWOOD JEDI's YouTube channel and watch his videos on it. You will not regret it. This is probably the best tool to ever come out for the raid community. So basically, once you put all the information in, you're going to want Skullcrusher as your lead, which I'll explain that shortly. And when you put in all the information, then you're going to go to Skullcrusher's A2 and you're going to delay it by 1 turn. So what that means is when you come over here to the calculator and it shows what abilities are going to be used, when you get to Skullcrusher, his first ability, if used on auto, will be his A2. So you're going to do it on manual and use only his A1. Once you do that, you are good to go. You can put it on auto after that. So once you get all the information put into the calculator and you delay his ability by 1 turn, so you're going to go through here. Once he delays 1 turn, his second turn will be right before the clan boss's first stun. It will show right here Skullcrusher's A2 is going to be used, and then the clan boss uses his stun. Then everyone uses whatever ability they're using, which the important part here is that Champion 2, which is the tower, and Skullcrusher will both use their A1. It doesn't matter what the other 3 use because they're going to be using whatever abilities you give them, you tell them to use. And then on round 4, and this is all on auto, by the way. Round 4, you'll see the tower using his A3, which is going to protect against the second AoE. So the first AoE in round 4 is going to be unprotected by block damage. This is where the Skullcrusher is going to take the damage from the ally protect. Okay? Once that happens, no one else is ever going to take damage. So the only one that's going to take damage is Skullcrusher. So after he uses that A3 on turn 4, you want to make sure that from there on out, you'll see Skullcrusher is using his A2 and right before the stun. So just scroll down and look for the stun and see that it's Skullcrusher A2. Skullcrusher A2, Skullcrusher A2, Skullcrusher A2, Skullcrusher A2, Skullcrusher A2, and go all the way down to turn 50 and make sure, just skim through and make sure that it shows Skullcrusher using his A2 right before the stun all the way down to level 50. That's how you know that it's working. And then you're going to go back up to level 4, or turn 4, sorry. And then you see that Roshcard, the tower, used his A3 there. And so right after the stun, AoE 1, from here on out, from turn 6 on down, right before the AoE 1, the tower should use his A3. So AoE 1, Champion 2 uses A3. AoE 1, AoE 1, all the way down. So just skim through and make sure that right before the AoE 1, Champion 2 uses his A3 all the way down. That's how you know that you're in sync. Because those are the only 2 that actually matter. We could care less about everything else. So So that's how you read that to make sure that you know that you're in sync all the way up to level 50 or turn 50. So the first thing that's going to happen is the tower is going to use his A3. Then you can use whatever you want on the other three. The other three champs. Once you get to Skullcrusher, you're going to use his A1 and then hit auto. And that's it. That's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. Now, what I did is I put Skullcrusher first. And the reason we put Skullcrusher first is because the clan boss will look at the person in the lead as the target first. So, in other words, if there's someone at a similar point in health, he's going to be the one that he targets. So, keep that in mind. There's a whole big thing on how the clan boss will target someone. It's based on their HP and where they're at in the lineup. So keep in mind, this is the first section, the first location, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So she's the most likely to be attacked because she's got the next highest HP. So I put her very last so that it's less likely that she gets attacked. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. So make sure when you're going in that you take it off of auto if it's on auto. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use Roshcard's ability to block damage. And then of course it doesn't really matter what we use on the other three. So whatever is best for those champions to maximize damage. And then here with Skullcrusher, the first thing we're going to do is his A1. And then we should be good to hit auto from here out. So this next time that he actually uses this, so he'll be protected, he'll take the stun. And now he'll lose the block, or the unkillable right there. And so that's the only place that people are going to take damage. So that's why when it's on an affinity boss, that's where that's going to be dangerous. But this composition should work on all affinities. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what affinity your clan boss is on, this composition should work. So, I mean, it's that simple. It's literally that simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this run for a couple of turns here so that you can see it running, and then we'll come back closer to the end. But I mean, it's got one of the easiest setups out of all the clan boss unkillable setups. And it's crazy, crazy good. He doesn't have the greatest gear. It's one... I mean, you got to be lucky enough to pull the tower, obviously. And it's got three really strong epics. So, I mean, all three of those epics are really good epics. And, of course, then you've got Frozen Banshee. So, if you're lucky enough to get tower, and you're lucky enough to have at least Skullcrusher, then I mean this is definitely an easy comp to put together. So, but anyway, I'm gonna let this run, and we'll come back toward the end and see where we're at. All right, here we are in round our turn count 48. And we're right at 21 million. As you can see, the only one taking any kind of damage at this point is my man Skullcrusher. So, I mean, we're right at 3 key level. So at 22 million, another million or so, we're definitely at 3 key. So just maxing out his gear will get him over that mark. And I mean, he's golden. We could possibly even switch out Doom Priest for another DPS type champ and possibly make that a 2-key Ultra Nightmare from a 4-key Nightmare. So, I mean, I think that's pretty successful. So that's it for this video. Just keep in mind, guys, if you're in an affinity boss and you're having issues with the affinity boss stunning someone other than Skullcrusher, it may be a situation to do with the HP levels. So increasing the other champions' HP, giving them some kind of gear that heals them, that kind of thing, could help fix that problem. So just keep that in mind when figuring out when it comes to affinity bosses and who they're stunning. So if you like this video and you want to see more, just hit the like button and join the hive by hitting the subscribe button, and we'll see you soon. See ya.